Hey guys, Chop here. The Gnostic Chorus in Genshin Impact is no cutscene, but a story teaser, and one that has been widely analysed since the birth of the game. From theories to the characters being the Traveller siblings, to Dainsleif, and I've even seen some theories on it being about Paimon. This has some wild theories on it, but I'm about to add something a little more concrete into the mix. Now, you're no child, and you're not from Teyvat, so we don't have to worry about your memory being skewed, so I'm not going to bother reminding you of the Gnostic Chorus. All I want you to keep in mind is that there was a female royal heir to a king of the kingdom in the heavens, who is tasked with retrieving the Genesis Pearl from another kingdom, the Kingdom of Darkness. We see in the visuals a serpent surrounding the pearl, and somehow this princess was deceived. No longer was she to retrieve the pearl, for in her mind, she was the queen of the Kingdom of Darkness. Then it ends with the second heir, the prince, who is on the same journey as his sister was to retrieve the pearl. Whoever Venti is telling this story to is whoever this prince is. It's also very important to note that the Gnostic Chorus is the name of the £20 version of the Battle Pass, whereas the £10 version is the Gnostic Hymn. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's properly analyse this, shall we? As I'm sure you're aware, Genshin Impact is based on the ancient belief of Gnosticism, when you look at the bigger picture of Teyvat at least. So, any creation myths of the world should have some correlations to this belief, but as we can see with the Battle Pass, it does go beyond just creation. It is literally titled the Gnostic Hymn. To understand the story teaser, we have to understand its title. Firstly, we know it's based on Gnosticism given its name, but we also know it's a hymn. What exactly is the hymn though, you may ask? Well, the hymn is a religious song or poem of praise to a god. This makes a lot of sense given that Venti, a poet, is retelling this poem to whoever the prince is. The only issue with the title is that we see no clear indicator of a god. There's not too many characters in this hymn honestly, just the king among the heavens, the two heirs of the king, and the serpents. At least one of these has to be a god for this to be a hymn. You'll see who I think this god is as I delve deeper into this theory. Now, before I talk about what the Gnostic hymn in the game goes on about, I'd like to share with you what it's based on. I oddly enough don't see people referencing this when discussing the topic, which seems really careless to do given that you might as well go to the original source for what Hoyoverse decided to base this on to get what you can from it. See, the story teaser is based on the real life ancient story, the Gnostic Hymn of the Pearl. I won't read all of it to you, just a couple extracts so you can see a reference in Genshin. When I was a little child and dwelling in my kingdom, in my father's house, and was content with the wealth and the luxuries of my nourishers, from the east, our home, my parents equipped me, sent me forth. Before I get into the next extract, I'm just going to translate this so it's a little easier to understand. The kingdom of the east had a king who sent his first heir, his son, on an adventure. This adventure was laid out fairly simply. If thou goest down to Egypt and bringest the one pearl, which is in the midst of the sea around the loud-breathing serpent, thou shalt put on thy glittering robe and thy toga, with which contended, and with thy brother, who is next to us in authority, thou shalt be heir in our kingdom. So, this heir was tasked with venturing into Egypt to retrieve a pearl in the middle of the sea, which was being guarded by a loud-breathing serpent. It is in this extract that we also learn of the heir's brother, who is next in line after him. The heir found the serpent and stayed in their abode until they would fall asleep, and that would be his chance to get the pearl. So what went wrong? Well, whilst waiting, he saw someone. One of my race, a free-born man and oriental. I saw there a youth fair and lovable, the son of oil sellers, and he came and attached himself to me, and I made him my intimate friend. So, somebody had attached themselves to the heir and befriended him very closely, and it's not clear whether it is related to this friendship or not, but the hymn continues on to say, I forget that I was a son of kings, and I served their king, and I forget the pearl for which my parents had sent me, and because of the burden of their oppressions, I lay in a deep sleep. That's the last extract I'll make you suffer with, for it is the most important part. The heir forgot his origins and believed he himself to be from this kingdom in Egypt that he was sent to. He forgot about his task to find the pearl, and it wasn't until later on that his father sent a letter via eagle reminding him of his purpose and origins that he was able to recall his memories. He snatched the pearl up and returned home to give the pearl to his father, the king. This story is very clearly the basis for the Gnostic Chorus story teaser. The heir to a throne is told by the king to venture to another kingdom to take a pearl from a serpent guarding it, and on this journey is twisted to forget their noble origins and believes themselves to be a part of the very kingdom they were sent to. This is the one-to-one comparison in the Genshin universe. However, there are some extra details in the quotes I read to you that we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen anything of a friend being present, and we haven't seen the heir regain their memories. Instead, the brother was sent on the same journey as them. The other key difference is the gender of the first heir, but I feel like this is a typical syzygy thing that Genshin just seems to love, more than anything actually lore-wise. I'd also like to point out the meaning behind the story, which most religious tales have. See, Gnostics are under the belief that the material plane is corrupt, and they need to gain the knowledge to transcend into the true heaven with the real god, not the creator god. So, this tale accounts a Gnostic journeying through the world and getting lost and hung up on the material world, believing this to be the reality. It was only when something as small as a little reminder was sent to them that they remembered their real journey and continued on to return back to their real home. It's a hymn that is supposed to teach people to not get caught up on this fake life, and to realise that they should be pursuing an established connection with the real God. Interestingly, the Gnostic Hymn of the Pearl was originally sung in a prison full of Gnostics to give them hope. It's not particularly relevant to the theory, it's just your chop fun fact of the day. Okay, so now we know what the Gnostic chorus is based on, let's look at analysing what we can out of it. The first thing I'm going to say is, I simply refuse to believe it to be the Traveller. I just cannot allow myself to think that Hoyoverse, which breadcrumbs their lore so well, is so lazy that they hide it being the Traveller behind their gender. They very clearly use Princess and Prince, and I know that the Aether is the canonical protagonist in all of the official trailers, but he isn't in the game. The canonical protagonist in the game is whichever character you pick. I mean, genuinely picture this. You get towards the end of the game where Venti actually relays his fable to you in-game. How stupid would it be for this to be the first time they misgender you because of the character you pick? It's just silly, and I refuse to believe Hoyoverse is that lazy with it. Besides, they say that the first crowned heir believed that she was the queen of the Kingdom of Darkness, and we know that the Abyss sibling is the prince or princess of the Abyss. Somebody is keeping them from being the queen or king. There is somebody above them in command. Perhaps that somebody is this very queen. Besides, who would the king be that told the princess to retrieve the Genesis Pearl? They can't be from the Abyss because that's where she lost her memory, so it's a bit risky to claim it was King Ermin when they seem somewhat similar. There's just too much wrong with it to say it's the Traveller siblings for me, so I'm going to rule it out. If not them though, then who? Well, it's probably the hardest question you can ask for a Genshin theory, because there's such a high chance that it's not even somebody we know yet. I can say that this is clearly a syzygy that Genshin loves so much. A syzygy is a male-female pairing of Aeons and are often depicted as opposing forces or ideals, like Light and Dark for example. Genshin does recognise syzygies because the Abyss event that crops up every reset literally states it. I think that syzygies will be a reoccurring theme more and more in Genshin, which is probably where a lot of the theories for Dainsleif having a sister come from, for example. So, the Queen of the Kingdom of Darkness will be an opposing ideal to the Prince of the Kingdom established among the heavens. Now, I do actually have a personal favourite theory for who represents these ideals, and therefore what this story actually means for Genshin Impact. I am of the belief that the Queen of the Kingdom of Darkness is Phanes, or the Heavenly Principles, and the Prince is the second who came, who I also believe, if you've seen my Sinner Identity video, is the Sinner we found in 3.5. For me, it's all coming together because of this. Yes, the kingdom among the heavens could be Celestia, but it's probably some kingdom of light where both the Primordial One and the Traveller twins are from. They're from the same world. Phanes came to Teyvat, which at the time was just the Dark Sea, aka, in fairy tale terms, the Kingdom of Darkness. The Dark Sea, Kingdom of Darkness, you see where I'm going? Phanes was tasked with finding the Genesis Pearl, but lost their memory and instead became the creator god of Teyvat. Phanes was just being a little goofy, a little silly, decided to create a whole world with life and order, you know how it is. So then, later on, this Kingdom of Light from beyond Teyvat's world sent the second who came, the syzygy, to the Primordial One. Unfortunately, the second who came lost the war and was sent to the Abyss, which is where we see the Sinner in the 3.5 Archon quest. However, as we know in Venti's allegorical tale, this being is supposed to succeed. We just haven't seen it yet. The Sinner is yet to complete his mission, we just witnessed the beginning of it during that story with Clotha. In fact, I'm even going to throw in some crazy speculation. I'm going to name the second Descender. You see, I believe the first and second Descenders, as well as the Traveller siblings, to be from the same world. We know the name of three being Aether, Lumine, and Phanes. In Greek mythology, there is a being called Kronos, not to be confused with Cronus. See, Kronos had many children, these being Chaos, Erebus, Hore, Hemera, the Moirae sisters, and of course, Phanes and Aether. We are missing Lumine, but give me a break, okay? It's not bad. I think this is probably a naming scheme that Hoyoverse has used for these characters and will again use for the second Descender. So, which child is he? Hore was to do with seasons, a little lackluster honestly. Hemera was the personification of day, again rather small and not what we're looking for. The other three options all have their own merit though. Chaos is the Greek equivalent to the Gnostic Abyss, which the second who came would have dealt with if they are this sinner. Similarly, if they are this sinner, then they were responsible for the Loom of Fate. And guess who the Moirae are? The three sisters that weave fate. The final one is Erebus, who is the personification of darkness. Again, very similar to the Abyss, but I hold it somewhat similar to Hemera, and it's just a little small for what we're looking for. I think the two most likely options are Chaos and Moirae. If I had to guess, however, I think Chaos probably predates the Sinner. He's just simply able to control Chaos, or the Abyss in Genshin terms. So, I think the second who came is Moirae, the Weaver of Fate. So, if this is the theory, then how does the fairy tale tell us what happened? What Venti is actually telling us is the world Aether and Lumine came from sent the Primordial One down to Teyvat to retrieve the Genesis Pearl, which likely has something to do with the creation of the universe or something larger than Teyvat. But instead, the Primordial One forgot their origins and believed themselves to come from Teyvat. Eventually, they switched from Phanes to the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles, as Nahida suggests. By which point, the second who came, Moirae, comes down to Teyvat to actually complete the missions. But the Sustainer won the battle, and Moirae became a sinner in Celestia's eyes. The pearl is still out there to find, and the second who came is still looking for it. This is the theory that I believe, but I will discuss a couple others in case you believe differently. See, if you can find what the ideals of the two opposing synergies are that feature in the Gnostic chorus, then suddenly the search for their identities becomes a lot easier. It's very hard to work that out though, because the most we have to go on is that one kingdom is among the heavens and wants the Genesis Pearl. The other is of darkness and wants... well, actually we don't know. Venti never said that the Genesis Pearl had anything to do with it. In fact, he never even mentioned a serpent. That was simply a visual telling. So for the kingdom among the heavens, the only thing we can take is heaven, which is rather synonymous with Celestia, in the same way darkness is synonymous with the Abyss in Genshin. Celestia and the Abyss opposing each other doesn't seem strange, so it certainly matches up pretty well. It also works as a syzygy quite accurately too. Why would anybody in Celestia be after the Genesis Pearl though? In fact, what actually is it? In the hymn I relayed to you that this whole story is based on, the Pearl is the objective of the heir. The objective of Gnostics is to reach enlightenment with their spiritual selves so that they may join the true God. So if it's at all similar in Genshin, then this Pearl is something similar to a Gnosis. Genesis means the origin, so this is the origin Pearl. Together, perhaps it means the origin of knowledge, enlightenment, something along those lines. It's really hard to say, honestly. Although that does sound like the origin of forbidden knowledge, which isn't a terrible shout. Celestia definitely would want to get the origin of forbidden knowledge if it was to exist, and we know that knowledge corrupts life. It could have corrupted the princess, and that's why she believes herself to be the queen of the Abyss. So, if this is all the case, then who's the prince that Venti says this to? It would have to be somebody else from Celestia. There's not many candidates for that though. I think the chess theory is pretty much all but confirmed at this point, given the interlude chapter trailer they released with the Fatui playing chess. In that case, who are the Archons playing against? I would say it's probably the celestial gods, whoever they may be. After all, we know there's more gods up there. Firstly, the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles, and secondly, Venti, in the manga, says, and I quote, "The gods gave her a seat in Holy Celeste." We know that there are more gods up there, and they might be the ones that the Archons unite to fight against. It also does justify calling it a hymn, because it would be a fairy tale about a god then. It's entirely plausible that this prince is from one of the kingdoms in Celestia, and in that case, we haven't met him yet, and are still waiting on it. I know this isn't the answer you want to hear, I know you want something a bit more concrete, but I have discovered something concrete. Knowing the story that this is based on helps us predict a lot of what's to come. There will be a serpent, likely in the Abyss, that we will probably have to fight. There is somebody above the Abyss sibling ruling the Abyss Order. There's some genuine concrete takeaways from all of this. I would like to say that I'm not at all against Dainsleif being this prince. He's very clearly an important figure from Conria, and we don't know much about him. What I would say is that you have to subscribe to the notion that Teyvat is upside down, which is already a pretty popular theory anyway, with the Spiral Abyss going higher as you get deeper, and the ancient chasm ruins being upside down too. There's plenty of evidence to suggest its validity, and if you do believe that, then suddenly this kingdom among the heavens could be Canria in the tale, while Celestia is the kingdom of darkness. Again, that does mean that Dainsleif has to be an Aeon as part of a syzygy where he has a sister that fell under the influence of Celestia. We have no reason to believe that he does or doesn't, so it's just pure guesswork in that case. It would be some helpful indicators to the reasoning for destroying Canria quite as ruthlessly as Celestia did, because they were after the Genesis Pearl, which clearly would be very important to them either way you look at it. The other popular belief is that it's something to do with Paimon, and honestly I just hate how everyone uses her as a scapegoat answer whenever there's a mystery. Paimon is not the answer to everything. In fact, she's currently the answer to nothing. She will be a big part of the lore, but she isn't yet. She's clearly lost her memories and very clearly has somebody that she was once loyal to before the Traveller. This is not her story. Dainsleif is absolutely the most convincing theory of these three, but I still would choose to believe that it's a creation story involving the primordial one and the second who came. I hope that what I found was of some interest to you guys. I know that I kind of relied on my last theory to support this one, but I think that I had to in order to get to some sort of conclusive answer. Genshin Impact does have many years left of being updated before we get to the answer of some of our burning questions, and Hoyoverse very rarely answers them. We're still wondering who the heavenly principles are, whether Celestia is good or evil, Paimon's true nature, what's up with our sibling, and they only pile more and more questions onto us as time goes on. I will be continuing my Genshin Theory series with some of the biggest questions in the game, because I still have more to add to the discussions that has not been mentioned before. So stick around if you want me to tickle your curiosity, just keep your filthy toes away. Oh, and let me know what you think too. I loved the comments on my Sinner video with the complete flood of opinions, so theorize away. Until my next video though, chop out. Bye.